While my family and I were enjoying dinner at a buffet, I accidentally spotted my husband's car in the parking lot. The business meeting he promised was actually a secret dinner that would shatter our marriage. The moment I saw the license plate, my hand went still over the salad bar tongs. KNG 4477. The personalized plate Marcus had argued over for 20 minutes at the DMV because he wanted it to spell king, but there weren't enough letters. He'd settled for the abbreviation and called it distinguished. His silver Audi A7 sat in the third row of the Golden Dragon Buffet parking lot, 3 spaces from the handicapped sign, parked slightly crooked the way Marcus always parked when he was in a hurry. My daughter Simone was tugging my sleeve, asking if they had the crab legs out yet. My mother-in-law Deborah was shuffling toward the hot food station. My son Caleb, 14 years old and already 6 feet of gangly sincerity, was loading a plate with egg rolls and grinning at nothing in particular. I said, "Give me a second, baby." I stood in the parking lot of the Golden Dragon Buffet on a Tuesday night in November, holding a purse with a broken strap I'd been meaning to fix for 3 months, looking at my husband's car. The car he drove to a business dinner in downtown Atlanta, a dinner that was supposed to end at 10. It was 7:18 p.m. My name is Renata Osi Mensah, and I need you to understand something before I go any further. I am not the kind of woman who snaps. I am the kind of woman who folds things neatly, puts them in a drawer, and tells herself she'll deal with them later. Therapists have had thoughts about this. My mother had more. Marcus and I had been married for 11 years. We met at a church potluck when I was 28 and he was 32, both of us at tables across the room from where we were supposed to be sitting. He'd taken the wrong seat and I'd laughed at him for it, and that was apparently all it took. He was charming in the easy, effortless way of men who've never had to try very hard. He was good-looking. He was funny in public and thoughtful in private, and he remembered that I hated mushrooms and that my father's name was Amos, and that I took my coffee with oat milk even before oat milk was a whole entire thing. In the early years, he was the kind of husband that made other women say you're so lucky, and I believed them, which is its own kind of warning, if you know how to read it. We had 2 children, a mortgage on a 4-bedroom in Decatur, and what I would have told you until that parking lot moment was a good marriage. Not perfect, not the kind you see in magazines, but sturdy. The kind where someone always makes coffee before the other one wakes up, where you remember to text when you're running late, where arguments get finished and not just abandoned. I am a high school chemistry teacher. I have a master's degree from Georgia State. I run a Saturday tutoring program for kids in Title I schools. I say this not to impress you, but because I need you to understand that I am not a woman who misses things. I notice things. That is, in fact, my entire professional skill set, which is why the things I missed about Marcus bother me the most. Marcus was a regional sales director for a medical equipment distributor called MedPath Solutions. He traveled sometimes 3-4 nights a month, and we'd built the rhythm of that into our life. I'd stopped asking for detailed itineraries years ago, which felt like trust at the time, and reads very differently now. Tuesday nights while he was away had become our family tradition. Deborah, the kids, and me at whatever restaurant Caleb picked. He almost always picked the Golden Dragon because he had a specific and unwavering devotion to their honey walnut shrimp. Deborah, Marcus's mother, not mine, though she'd treated me like hers since the beginning, was 71 years old and had been coming to these dinners for 4 years. She was a retired school teacher who wore colorful cardigans and had opinions about everything and loved her son the way only mothers can love the men who disappoint them, which is to say, completely and with full awareness of who he was. I say that now. I say it looking back. That evening, we'd parked near the entrance and walked in together. Same as always. It was Deborah who spotted the Audi first, actually, though she didn't say anything then. I only learned that later. I was the one who stopped. I stood on the asphalt in the November cold and stared at the plate that read KNG 4477 and felt the first cold thread of something pull through my chest. Not rage, not yet. Something quieter. The feeling you get when a picture that's been hanging slightly crooked your entire marriage suddenly tilts all the way to the floor and you realize you've been seeing it wrong for years. I went inside, I got a plate, I sat down, and I waited. The thing about a man who lies well is that he's also, by necessity, built a version of you that's complicit in the lie. Marcus had been saying business dinner the way other people say I'm fine, reflexively, without thinking about whether anyone believes it anymore. And I had been responding the same way. Okay, drive safe. Text me when you're heading home. That Tuesday, he'd left the house at 5:15 in a charcoal suit and the Italian shoes he only wore for client meetings. He'd kissed me on the cheek. He'd messed up Caleb's hair and told Simone her art project looked fire, which was the word he used to prove to himself that he was still relatable. He'd said, probably won't be home before 10. Henderson account's a whole thing. Henderson account. I'd heard that name 3 times in the last 6 weeks. Henderson account in Chicago. Henderson account in Charlotte. Henderson account apparently now in Atlanta, right here at the Golden Dragon Buffet on Briarcliff Road. I sat across from Deborah and watched her arrange her napkin in her lap, and I said very carefully, Deborah, did you see Marcus's car in the parking lot? She didn't look up right away. She smoothed the napkin once more. I did, she said. That was all she said, but the way she said it, the 2 syllables of I did, delivered with the flatness of someone who had been holding a breath for a very long time. That told me more than the car in the parking lot did. I excused myself to get more water. I didn't go to the water station. The Golden Dragon is a big restaurant, 2 main dining rooms, a buffet wing, and a private banquet room in the back that you can rent for parties. I'd been there enough times to know the layout. I walked slowly toward the back, past the dessert dessert station with its chocolate fondue fountain and the rack of steamed buns, and I turned the corner into the rear hallway. The banquet room door had a narrow rectangular window in it. I looked through the window at 7:31 p.m. There were 12 people at the table inside. I recognized 3 of them. Marcus's co-worker, Deshawn, who I'd met at the company Christmas party, Marcus's college friend, Terrell, and a woman named Brianna Solis, who had been Marcus's work friend for the past 2 years, who had once sent me a LinkedIn connection request that Marcus said was totally normal. She does that with everyone. Brianna Solis was sitting next to my husband. She was wearing a red dress. Marcus had his arm along the back of her chair, and they were laughing at something. Not the polite laugh of colleagues, but the relaxed, open laugh of people who were completely comfortable with each other. The laugh of people who had laughed together many times in private. I stood at that window for 11 seconds. I counted them. Then I walked back to my table. I sat down. I picked up my fork. Caleb said, "Mom, you okay? You look kind of pale." "I'm good, baby," I said. "Just a little cold." Deborah looked at me. She knew. I could see it in the set of her mouth. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "Eat something," she said quietly. "You're going to need your strength." I didn't confront Marcus that night. I know that's the part where some of you would have kicked the banquet room door open and turned the whole thing into an event, and I understand the impulse. But I have 2 children, and I've watched enough women blow up their own lives in public because they moved before they had anything solid in their hands. I wasn't going to be that woman. Not yet. I drove home. I put the kids to bed. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, and I thought about 11 years. And I mean, I really thought. I went back through it methodically, the way I would approach a chemistry experiment that wasn't producing the expected results. Adjust the variables, question the assumptions, start over with cleaner eyes. The business trips that increased slowly, like a fever you don't notice until you're already sick. The phone that lived face down on every surface. The new gym habit that started 9 months ago. He had never been a gym person in 11 years of marriage, and then suddenly he was going 3 times a week and coming home with his hair freshly washed. I'd registered that. I'd released it. Because what kind of wife interrogates a man for exercising? The way he'd started asking me more questions about my schedule. Casually, conversationally. When does your tutoring program run? Does your department meeting usually go long? Questions I'd read as interest. Questions that were, I now understood, reconnaissance. The LinkedIn connection request from Brianna Solis 18 months ago. I'd mentioned it and he'd laughed. "She does that with everyone, babe. She's a networker." And I had laughed too. I had laughed. The Henderson account. I opened my laptop. Henderson Medical Supplies, based in Birmingham, was a real company. They were, according to their website, a mid-sized distributor of surgical tools and hospital equipment. They did not appear to have offices in Atlanta, Chicago, or Charlotte. I typed Brianna Solis's name into LinkedIn. Her profile photo looked exactly as I'd remembered her through the window. Dark hair, professional headshot, director of business development at a pharmaceutical company in Alpharetta, 500+ connections, mutual connections, Marcus Osei Mensa. I looked at the timestamp of his LinkedIn endorsement of her project management skills. April 14th, our daughter Simone's 9th birthday. I sat with that for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. I went to bed at 2 a.m. and didn't sleep. Marcus came home at 10:47 and slid into bed and kissed my shoulder and said, "Good dinner?" "Great," I said into the pillow. You know how those things go," he said. Long. I listened to him breathe until he fell asleep. I stared at the ceiling. You know how those things go. The next morning, I called my college roommate Priya Nair, who is now a family law attorney in Buckhead with 17 years of practice and a reputation for not letting things slide. She had been my best friend since 1998, and she had met Marcus at our wedding, and she had never once said anything negative about him to my face, which in retrospect might have been its own kind of warning. I told her what I'd seen. She was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she said. "Here's what you don't do. You don't confront him yet. You don't let him know you know. You don't move anything out of accounts. You don't say a word." "Priya, I know," she said. "I know how you feel right now, but you do this right, or you do it over again. So here's what you do. You call Marcus Reeves." Marcus Reeves, not my Marcus, a different one, was a private investigator Priya had worked with on 3 different divorce cases. She gave me his number. She said he was thorough and discreet, and that his billing rate was $185 an hour, and it would be worth every cent. I called him from my car in the grocery store parking lot at 11 a.m. while Marcus was at the office. His voicemail said, "This is Marcus Reeves, licensed private investigator, Georgia PI license 7734. Please leave a detailed message." I left a detailed message. He called back in 40 minutes. Marcus Reeves was a compact, quiet man of about 55 with gray at his temples and the manner of someone who'd heard every version of every story and had stopped being surprised by any of them. We met at a coffee shop in Decatur on a Thursday morning. He had a legal pad, a recorder, and a cup of black coffee he didn't touch. He asked me questions for an hour. He asked about travel patterns, about phone behavior, about changes in routine. He asked about the woman in the red dress, and I told him what I knew, which wasn't much. He wrote down Brianna Solis and underlined it twice. "Give me 2 weeks," he said. "What are you going to do?" "Document what's documentable," he said. "The goal right now is to establish a pattern. One incident is an incident. A pattern is evidence." He asked for a retainer of $1,500. I had a personal savings account Marcus didn't know about. I'd started it years earlier, a quiet habit born from a quiet instinct I'd never examined too closely. I paid Marcus Reeves from that account. He handed me a card. It said Reeves Investigative Services, LLC. and listed a phone number and a website and, at the bottom, in small print, the Georgia licensing information. "Don't change anything at home," he said. "Don't move money. Don't talk to mutual friends. Don't tell anyone except your attorney." I already talked to my attorney. "Good," he said. "That's good." He shook my hand and left. I sat with my coffee and watched the door close behind him and felt the specific, terrible weight of being a woman who now had a private investigator. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life, and I am including the week my father had triple bypass surgery and the month Simone had pneumonia at 3 years old. I got very good at normal. I made dinners and attended Caleb's basketball practice and helped Simone with her science fair project about water filtration. I laughed at Marcus's jokes. I slept next to him. I said goodnight and drive safe and text me when you're heading home like a woman who did not have a licensed private investigator tracking her husband's movements. The hard part was not the pretending. I'm a teacher. I perform composure for a living. The hard part was the specific texture of ordinary moments now that I was seeing them clearly. Marcus pouring orange juice at breakfast and asking if I'd remembered to schedule the furnace check. Marcus singing along to the radio in the car. Marcus laughing at something on his phone and turning the screen slightly, automatically, the way a person does who has been turning screens for a long time. I noticed every screen turn now. There were 4 in one weekend. I wrote them down in a notes app I password protected and relabeled grocery lists. Priya called every few days to check in. She never asked how I was holding up. She knew the answer and she knew I didn't need to say it. She asked what I'd observed, what had changed, whether I felt safe. I told her I felt fine. She told me that was both encouraging and concerning. Deborah, I hadn't told her about Reeves, hadn't said a word. Started showing up on Tuesday nights with extra food, like she was quietly fortifying me. Braised oxtail one week, a whole pound cake the next. She never mentioned the parking lot, but she watched me with a careful attention that said she hadn't forgotten it, and sometimes she would hold my gaze for just a half second longer than usual, in a way that meant, I see you. Keep going. It kept me going. On day 11, Marcus Reeves called. Can you come in? He said. That bad? I said. A beat. It's thorough, he said. His office was on the 3rd floor of a building in Sandy Springs. He had a glass-topped desk and a wall of filing cabinets and 2 monitors that he angled slightly when I sat down, out of habit rather than necessity. He handed me a manila folder. Inside was a report, typed and organized, 43 pages long. It included photographs, 12 of them time-stamped. Brianna Solis and my husband at a restaurant in Brookhaven on October 14th, at the same restaurant on October 28th, at a parking garage on Peachtree on November 3rd, embracing, at a hotel, the Emory Conference Center, $289 a night, on November 9th, checking in together at 6:17 p.m. Hotel receipts, obtained through methods Reeves described only as my process. The credit card used was a Visa ending in 4421, not the joint account, not the card I knew about, a card I had never seen. Phone records, not the content, he didn't have that, but the call logs, which showed 847 contacts with Brianna Solis's number over the preceding 8 months. Texts and calls, multiple times a day, on holidays, on the morning of our anniversary, on the morning of our anniversary. I sat in Marcus Reeves's office and stared at that line in the report until it stopped making sense as language and became just marks on paper. How long? I asked. Minimum 8 months documented, he said. But the pattern of the call frequency in the earlier record suggests it could be 14, 16 months. I put the folder down. I picked it up. I put it down again. There's something else, Reeves said. He didn't look pleased about it. The credit card. I ran the account number through some public records. It was opened 18 months ago. There are charges on it going back that far. What kind of charges? He slid a printed statement across the desk. Restaurants, hotels, a jewelry store on Buckhead's Phipps Plaza, $1,340 on March 3rd. A weekend stay at a resort in Highlands, North Carolina, $847 on July 4th weekend. July 4th weekend. We had spent July 4th with my parents in Savannah. Marcus had joined us 2 days late because of, and I was now hearing this phrase in a new register entirely, the Henderson account. The total spend on the card over 18 months is approximately $23,700, Reeves said. He said it carefully, the way doctors say things. I heard myself say, from somewhere very far away, okay, Mrs. Osei Mensah, I'm okay, I said. I just need a minute. He gave me the minute. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't fill the silence. He was professional in the way that, in that moment, was the only bearable thing. When I was ready, I looked up and said, what do I do with this? You take it to your attorney, he said, and you decide what you want. Priya met me that afternoon at her office in Buckhead. She was on the 22nd floor with a view of Midtown that, on a clear day, made you feel like the city was something you could hold in your hands. She read the report in 20 minutes. She made notes in the margins. She was quiet in the focused way she'd been quiet in law school when she was working something through. Then she set the folder down and folded her hands on top of it. Okay, she said. Here's where we are. She walked me through the legal landscape of Georgia divorce law, the way she might have walked me through a map. At-fault divorce. The marital waste doctrine, because the $23,700 on the secret credit card constituted dissipation of marital assets on an extramarital relationship, which Georgia courts took seriously. Equitable division of assets. The house which we'd bought together but whose down payment had come substantially from my inheritance from my grandfather. We're in a strong position, she said. I don't care about position, I said. I care about my kids. Then custody is what we prioritize, she said. She looked at me. Renata, this is going to be a hard process. I want you to go in with your eyes open. My eyes are open, I said. She believed me. I could tell she believed me because she stopped explaining and started planning. The decision about how to proceed, whether to confront Marcus privately or file first and let the papers do the talking, was one I sat with for 3 days. I talked to a therapist, Dr. Yvonne Charles, whose practice was in Avondale Estates and who had a degree from Emory and 22 years of experience working with families in crisis. She didn't tell me what to do. That wasn't her job, but she helped me understand what I needed, which turned out to be simpler than I'd made it. I needed Marcus to know that I knew, not from a lawyer's letter, from me. I arranged for the kids to stay with my parents in Savannah for a long weekend. I waited until a Friday evening when Marcus came home from work in a good mood, loosening his tie in the doorway, asking if we had any of that leftover rice from the Thai place. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The folder from Reeves was open in front of me. I said, "Sit down, Marcus." He saw the folder and went very still. He didn't ask what it was. That told me everything I still needed to know. He tried 4 things in sequence. First, he tried denial, brief and unconvincing. "Whatever you think you saw." Then anger, slightly longer. "You hired someone to follow me? You went through my..." Then tears. He sat down at the table and put his face in his hands and cried in the way men cry when they're crying for themselves, which is a different sound than crying for someone else. The sound was wretched. I noticed that I felt nothing watching it, which told me something about how far we'd already traveled from where we used to be. Then explanation. Brianna was going through a hard time. It started as friendship. He never meant for it to go this far. He loved me. He loved the family. He wanted to fix it. He would do whatever it took. I let him talk. I didn't interrupt. I kept my hands flat on the table and my face very still, and I let him get through all of it. I'd heard this before, not from Marcus, but from students who'd been caught cheating on exams. The first instinct is always to fill silence with narrative, to build a story that puts you at the center of your own misfortune rather than your choices. I waited until he was done. Then I slid the hotel receipt for November 9th across the table toward him. The Emory Conference Center. 2 names. Check-in. 6:17 p.m. "Tell me about the Henderson account," I said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my kitchen. "Renata, there is no Henderson account," I said. "Henderson Medical Supplies is headquartered in Birmingham. They have no offices in Atlanta, Chicago, or Charlotte." I checked their website, their LinkedIn page, and their annual corporate filing with the Alabama Secretary of State. He put his hand over his face. "How long?" I asked. He said nothing. "Marcus." My voice didn't shake. I'd surprised myself with that. "How long?" He looked up. His eyes were red and wet, and he looked, at that moment, exactly like what he was. A man who had finally been caught and had absolutely no strategy left. 14 months, he said. The number landed differently than I expected. Not like a bomb, like a door closing. 14 months, the gym habit, Simone's birthday LinkedIn endorsement, the trips to Charlotte, Chicago, the cities with no Henderson account. 14 months of a parallel life running alongside mine, touching it at all the edges, never quite visible. I nodded. I stood up. I said, "I need you to go stay somewhere else tonight. We can arrange the rest through Priya." "Priya, she's my attorney," I said. "You'll want to find your own." He looked at me for a long moment. I knew what he was looking for. He was looking for the opening, the crack in my composure through which a negotiation might begin. He was looking for the woman who had, for 11 years, absorbed things and moved on and chosen the path of least disruption because it was easier for everyone, including herself. She wasn't there anymore. He left at 8:22 p.m. I sat in the kitchen for a while. The house was very quiet. Not the bad kind of quiet. The after kind. The kind when something is finally over. The refrigerator hummed. The street outside was still. I put my hands around a mug of tea I hadn't drunk and I just sat. Then I called my kids. Caleb answered. I could hear him and Simone arguing in the background about something inconsequential and wonderful, whether the snacks Grandma had bought were actually for them or for Grandma's book club. "Hey, Mom," he said. "You okay?" "Yeah, baby," I said. "I'm okay." I meant it. The divorce took 7 months. I won't take you through every motion and counteroffer and tense conversation in Priya's conference room. I'll tell you the parts that matter. Marcus hired a family law attorney named Douglas Payne, who had a reputation for aggressive litigation, and who sent a letter in the first week suggesting that the marital waste claim was speculative. Priya replied with the full Reeves report, the hotel receipts, the credit card statements, and the call logs, attached to a motion that used the phrase dissipation of marital assets 17 times. Douglas Payne revised his approach. The secret credit card turned out to be tied to a business account Marcus had structured through his LLC, one I hadn't known about, which he'd been using to route some of his commission income for the better part of 2 years. A forensic accountant named Gerald Whitfield, CPA, CFE, 40 years of practice, former IRS examiner, was brought in at Priya's recommendation. Gerald Whitfield's report was 61 pages. It found $41,000 in undisclosed income over 26 months. In a Georgia divorce, that matters. The house went to me. Marcus kept the LLC and its liabilities, which, Gerald Whitfield had noted, included some reporting inconsistencies that were now the subject of a referral to the Georgia Department of Revenue. That last part had not been part of our plan. It was a consequence of the forensic accounting, which has a way of finding things beyond the scope of what you originally asked it to find. Priya called me with that news on a Thursday afternoon. "I want you to know," she said carefully, "that the revenue referral was not something we pursued. It came from the accountant's mandatory reporting obligations." "I understand," I said. "I want to make sure you're okay okay with how this is unfolding. I thought about it. Priya, I said, I asked for accurate accounting of our marital assets. What accurate accounting turned up is accurate accounting's business. She laughed. Short, a little tired. Okay, she said. Okay. Brianna Solis, for what it's worth, did not appear in the divorce proceedings except as a named party in the documentation. She and Marcus were, as far as I could tell, no longer together by the time the decree was finalized. I don't know what happened between them. It's not my business. What is my business? My children. Custody was shared. 50-50. Standard schedule. Caleb took it hard for the first month and then seemed to find his footing. He's 15 now. He's got his father's jawline and my grandmother's stubbornness, and he tells me more than I probably need to know about his life, which I treasure completely. Simone was 9 when we told her. She cried. She asked me if it was her fault. I held her and told her it was not, clearly and directly and as many times as she needed to hear it, which was 7 that day and more in the months after. She's 11 now. She's building a hydroponics garden in the backyard. She narrates it like a nature documentary. They're okay, not untouched by it, but okay. Deborah still comes to Tuesday dinners. I wasn't sure she would. She's Marcus's mother, and I'd understood that the divorce would mean the loss of some relationships I'd valued, but Deborah called me 3 days after Marcus moved out. She said, I want you to know that I love my son, and I want you to know that doesn't change what I think. I asked her what she thought. She said, I think he didn't understand what he had. And then she asked if Tuesday dinner was still happening, because Caleb had texted her about the Golden Dragon's new crab rangoon, and she wasn't going to let a little thing like a divorce stand between her and crab rangoon. We went to the Golden Dragon that Tuesday. We sat in the main dining room. We did not sit near the back hallway. Caleb got the honey walnut shrimp. Some things survive. It's been 14 months since I stood in that parking lot and stared at a license plate and felt the cold thread pull through my chest. I'm not going to tell you I'm grateful for what happened. I'm not interested in performing resilience for the internet. I lost 11 years of a marriage I'd believed in, and that is a real loss, and I'm allowed to say so without needing to decorate it. But here's what I will tell you. I now sleep in the middle of the bed. I have a savings account still. It's larger now. I have a therapist I see every other week, Dr. Charles. She's still in Avondale Estates. I've stopped thinking of it as crisis management and started thinking of it as maintenance, which feels like progress. I have a best friend who took my call on a Thursday morning and did not ask a single question that wasn't useful. I have a mother-in-law who showed up the following Tuesday with a covered dish and a refusal to let grief become the last thing between us. And I have 2 kids who are going to be fine, who are, actually, already fine in the ways that matter most, because they know that when something was broken in their house, the adult responsible for them didn't fall apart. She made a plan. She moved with precision. She waited until she had everything solid in her hands before she acted, because some things you only get to do once. You might as well do them right. The last thing I'll tell you happened 3 months after the divorce was finalized. Marcus came to pick up the kids for the weekend. He pulled up in the Audi. He'd kept the car, lost the plate, just KNG 4477 gone, replaced with a standard issue. I noticed it because I notice things now. I notice everything. He looked tired. He looked like a man who'd been through a reorganization he hadn't authorized. I handed him a bag with Simone's swim gear and Caleb's phone charger. We stood on the porch the way 2 people stand when they're being careful with each other. He said, Renata, I'm sorry. I looked at him. 11 years, 2 kids, a parking lot in November. I know, I said. I went back inside. I stood in my kitchen, my house, and I made coffee. And I watched the light come through the window, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt like I'd finally seen the whole room.